Hello there. This is Brandon Mull. Um, I am happy to be with you guys this morning. Hopefully, you can hear me okay. Normally, I like to do school visits in person, but I've done thousands of them that way over the last 15 years or so. But with COVID, we are doing virtual visits this time, and I am happy to be with you. I wish I could be there physically, and maybe it's smart that I'm not, just for because of how crazy the world is right now. Um, like to say hi to a few of the schools that are on in this session. We've got Burton Elementary in Kaysville, Utah, and Parkside Community School in Austin, Texas. We've got Chaparral Elementary in Gilbert, Arizona, Schirkenbach Elementary in Las Vegas, Nevada, Thunder Ridge Elementary in Saratoga Springs, Utah, Continuous Curriculum School up in Spokane, Washington. I was just up your guys' way not too long ago. I went up to, I was spending time with my wife up in, oh man, what's that? Coeur d'Alene, up in Coeur d'Alene. That's not too far from you guys in Spokane. Rigby Middle School in Rigby, Idaho, and Bridgewater Elementary in Idaho Falls, then Cokeville Elementary in Cokeville, Wyoming. That's maybe not everybody, but that's a sampling. I am thankful for the chance I have to talk to you guys today. Um, I'm Brandon Mull. I write fantasy adventure novels. Maybe we can get to know each other a little bit if I answer a few questions I sometimes get. Uh, I need you over here for a sec, just to make it. Just 1 second. Yeah, I know, right? Is it just a click?
Yeah.
There it is. Okay, so I'll remember that for the future. One of those questions I'll get sometimes is what we like as a kid. Here's some photos. That is me about to get eaten by a giraffe. That's me trying to feed my little brother, me in those awesome pajamas. That is Halloween. That is not Halloween. That is me in my grandpa's World War II uniform. Everybody has embarrassing moments. I'll tell you guys about one. This embarrassing moment happened when I was in school. I was late for my bus, and to get to that bus, I had to go down 2 flights of stairs. I got down the first flight of stairs just fine. I rounded the corner. I started down that second flight. I was taking those quick little steps that you take when you hurry downstairs too fast, and I was carrying a heavy backpack, which I swung forward at just the wrong moment. All of a sudden, I had too much force taking me down those stairs. It left me with two choices. Choice one was to duck my head and just roll down the stairs. Choice two was to sort of try to jump and try to save it somehow. So I jumped, cleared about 8 steps, just landed flat on my stomach, slid into the wall. What made it worse, those stairs were crowded with my classmates. From their point of view, it looked like for no reason at all, I had just done a massive belly flop down that whole stairway. Not really my proudest moment. But something I have learned as a writer is that all of my experiences, even the embarrassing ones, can come in handy when it's time to write a book. Good writers are always looking for details we can use to bring our stories to life. Sometimes I get asked if I get to meet other authors as part of my job, and yeah, that happens sometimes. A few years back, I created a series called Spirit Animals with Scholastic. Spirit Animals was written by a team of 7 authors. My job was to be the leader of that team, so I had to create the world for Spirit Animals, write the outline for the 7 books so we could all be telling the same story, and then I had to write book 1 in that series. I did that, and after doing that, I went on book tour with some of the other Scholastic authors. That guy zapping me in the back is Rick Riordan, who wrote the Percy Jackson series, 39 Clues series. It's also James Dashner, Gordon Corman, Jude Watson. One of the fun parts of my job is interacting with some of the other authors whose books I like. In my free time as a kid, it was organized baseball, organized soccer. As I got older, I got into tennis. And now that I have kids, a lot of my time goes to my kids. I brought along a few recent photos. These are my proof that I'm a very mature guy. I do have 4 kids. Those kids are Sadie, Chase, Rose, and Calvin. Calvin's the one with the amazing hair. And then about 4 years back, I went through a divorce. And then just this summer, the summer of COVID, back in June, I got married to this lady whose name is Erlyn. And so now she brought some new kids into the family. So now there's 11 kids total, and that keeps life interesting and busy. But it's also great. That's the family dog. That dog is called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is Buffy running with my daughter, and this is Buffy eating my son. I have written a bunch of different books. Let me walk you through some of the books that I have written. It's coming. There we go. So my first published series was Fablehaven, which is a 5-book series. Candy Shop War has 2 books in it so far. The Pingo Picture books. Beyonders was a 3-book series about these broken heroes. Spirit Animals for Scholastic. The 5 Kingdoms series is 5 books long. And then my newest series is Dragonwatch, which is the sequel series to Fablehaven. It's the direct sequel to the first series I wrote. Same main characters, Kendra and Seth, but a bunch of new adventures. I also have a new picture book for the first time in a long time called Smarter Than a Monster, a survival guide. This picture book is a survival guide to the kind of monsters you find around your house. Now, most of the books I write are novels, longer books. Since the picture book is short, I can give you a little sample of this story. Here's some sample pages. The first place most kids expect to find a monster is in the closet. The second place is under the bed. These are common mistakes. No self-respecting monster would hide in such obvious places. Certain fierce monsters have learned that frightened kids will sometimes sneak into bed with their parents. So these clever predators hide under the parents' bed where nobody thinks to check. Usually, monsters leave kids alone when they are in their own beds, making your bed a fairly safe place. Monsters like dirt and grime. If a monster could choose between 2 kids, it will usually eat the filthy one. That gives you a little bit of the flavor of that story. As a kid, I was the kind of kid that always imagined monsters around the house. And hopefully this puts like kind of a fun spin on that concept. Gives you some strategies to fight off those imaginary monsters. 17 of my books have been New York Times bestsellers. That is a relief as an author. I write these books hoping they will connect with readers. And so when a book hits the bestseller list, it just shows that accomplishing that goal. Fablehaven was my first published series. This series is 5 books long, and our main characters are a girl and boy, a brother and sister, named Kendra and Seth Sorensen. At the start of the series, Kendra is 13, her brother Seth is 11, and they discover that their grandparents are the caretakers of a secret wildlife park for magical creatures. The idea behind Fablehaven is, what if the reason we don't see magical creatures in our world today, like golems or giants or dragons, satyrs, centaurs, fairies, what if all these different creatures are hidden on secret wildlife preserves, being watched over by human caretakers? Our story starts off at a wildlife park called Fablehaven, set in Connecticut. But as the series goes on, the characters journey farther and farther from Fablehaven to different wildlife parks for magical creatures, including a secret dragon sanctuary and an ancient demon prison. Some of my favorite Fablehaven books are the later books in the series. Books 4 and 5 have some of the biggest action, some of the best twists. If you read all the Fablehaven books, you'll see most of the magical creatures you've heard of. We compiled the creatures of Fablehaven into this Caretaker's Guide to Fablehaven. I grew up reading about magical creatures, and part of my goal with Fablehaven was to include magical creatures from many different myths and traditions. Almost all the creatures you've heard of will show up at some point in this series, from leprechauns to goblins to dragons to unicorns. And if there's stuff we missed in Fablehaven, probably most of what we missed will show up at some point in Dragonwatch. Dragonwatch is the direct sequel series to Fablehaven. When I finished my Fablehaven books, I realized that some of the best adventures in the series had happened at the Dragon Sanctuary, but we didn't spend a lot of time at the Dragon Sanctuary in that first series. The dragon sanctuaries are the largest and most dangerous wildlife parks for magical creatures. And in Dragonwatch, we get to deal with a worldwide dragon rebellion. See, the dragons view these sanctuaries kind of like a prison. And so one of the main characters one of the main problems our characters will have to deal with is a worldwide dragon uprising. These books are illustrated by Brandon Dorman. He does the interiors and the exteriors. His beautiful art helps bring the books to life, adds some extra personality to all the stories. He illustrated all the Fable Havens and all the Dragon Watches as well. Book 2 of Dragon Watch has a flying bunny on the cover. I'll leave that a mystery as to why. Book 3 is called Master of the Phantom Isle. We go to an island dragon sanctuary where you can see some of the magical creatures of the sea, like sea dragons and sea serpents, mermen, that kind of stuff. And the newest one, which just came out last month, is called Champion of the Titan Games, Book 4 of Dragonwatch. It's the second to last. There's one more coming after this. In Book 4, we go to a dragon sanctuary called Titan Valley, which is run by giants. Now, most of these sanctuaries, the goal is to let the dragons roam kind of free and hunt like they normally hunt and live in a fairly comfortable way. But at Titan Valley, the giants have exerted a lot of authority and dominion over the dragons. A lot of the dragons have kind of been enslaved, and they're made to fight in arenas, and they're made to help drive machines. And it's really like of any of the dragon sanctuaries, Titan Valley is where you'd go, maybe the dragons do need to have a rebellion. In this book, we get a lot of interesting clashes between giants and dragons as the dragon war escalates. And there's all sorts of trouble that happens in this story that leads into Book 5, which I'm working on right now, and will be the climax, the finale of the series. Ever since I was a kid, I have been learning this lesson that imagination can take you places. As a kid, I wasn't a huge reader, but when I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it taught me that a book could make me feel like I'd been transported to another place, where my imagination really could take me on adventures. As I got older and started sharing my own stories, I also learned that by sharing my imagination, it could take me all over the place. I've gone to Moscow, Russia to visit schools and share about my books. I've gone to Alaska to share about my books. Those pictures are from Nome. I've gone to Jakarta, Indonesia to visit students, and Singapore. I went to China not too long ago. And I'm grateful for Book Tour. I'm grateful for the different places I get to visit, because writing is a mix of observation and daydreaming. To have something to write about, you have to have experiences and details that you've encountered in your life. At least it really, really helps. And so by traveling around the world, it feeds my imagination with ingredients that I can use in future stories. That picture is from China. That's Shanghai Tower, the second highest building in the world. Also, sometimes people get inspired by my books to do their own creative endeavors. In St. Louis, a modern dance company did a dance version of Fablehaven, which is not something I ever expected when I first wrote that book. Fablehaven's been translated into many different languages. It's been translated into over 30 languages. The cover you see there is the cover of Fablehaven in German, Fabelheim. Sometimes when my books come out in foreign countries, they use different art than we chose here in America. I don't even know what is on the cover of Fabelheim. To me, that looks like Yoda's awkward brother. Kind of the weirdest of my foreign covers. Maybe like a less watched Mandalorian spinoff in the works there. There's a lot of ways we can keep our imaginations powerful. I want to talk to you about some of the ways we get our entertainment. How many of you sometimes watch TV for fun? I'll do that sometimes. How about go to movies for fun? Maybe before COVID more than now, right? But I've gone to movies for years. How about video games for fun sometimes? My house, that's Zelda a lot, Minecraft, games like that. Sporting events for fun. How about reading for fun? We got some readers out there too. I think everything on this list can be fun. But I do like to make the argument that reading a good book is good for our imagination in a way that's different than TV and movies. See, for me, one of the differences is when I watch a TV show, I'm seeing what happens up on a screen, right? Or when I'm in a movie, I see what's happening on a screen kind of from a distance. But when I read a book, the story happens inside my own imagination. Because the story is happening inside of me, it almost makes me feel like I'm part of the story, or like I'm there with the characters, thinking what they think, or feeling what they feel, seeing what they see. Also, when I read a book, I am free to picture that story exactly how I choose to see it. Sometimes when I'm watching a movie, like it might be really cool and it might even be good, but there's only one way to see it, the way they're showing it to me, right? But when I read a book, I'm free to see that story exactly how I choose. And because I'm creating the story in my own mind, it forces my imagination to work hard and get strong in a way it doesn't have to if someone shows me exactly what everything looks like. Let's look at an example of this idea of picturing the story for ourselves when we read. This is a moment in Fablehaven where a character named Seth meets a witch. As I read this description, just picture in your brain what this lady might look like based on these words, okay? Here we go. Beside the stump, dressed in crude rags, sat a wiry old woman gnawing at a knot in a bristly rope. Shriveled with age, she clutched the rope in bony hands with knobby knuckles. Her long white hair was matted and had a sickly yellowish tint. One of her filmy eyes was terribly bloodshot. Her pale arms, bare almost to the shoulder, were thin and wrinkled, with faint blue veins and a few purple scabs. When the woman saw Seth, she dropped the rope immediately, wiping pink saliva from the corner of her meager lips. Supporting herself against the trunk, she stood up. He noticed her long feet, the color of ivory, peppered with insect bites. Her gray toenails looked thick with fungus. All right, so hopefully as I read that description, you get some sort of picture of a witch in your imagination. Now, some authors will take time describing a beautiful sunset. Me, I'm just describing here a scabby witch. Part of the reason for that is the witch is an important character in the story, and I wanted her to seem as gross and scary as she's supposed to. Now, the guy who drew the cover for Fablehaven, that artist, he read those words and he pictured that witch like this. That was not exactly how I pictured the witch for myself, but I thought it was a cool way to draw her. A different artist read the same words. He saw the witch this way. A little more gross and scary. The artist who drew that one was my cousin. A third artist read the same description, pictured the witch like this. Again, a different style. So here's my question. 3 different artists read the exact same words, but they pictured that same witch 3 very different ways. Who do you suppose got it right? I visited lots of schools and asked this same question. And I know that sometimes people will pick a favorite, like the first one or the second or the third. Sometimes people will say none of them got it right, or some will say all of them got it right. My favorite answer is that all of them got it right, because that describes how reading works. When you are reading, you are free to picture that story exactly how you think it looks best. I love that when I read a good book, I can see it like a movie in my imagination. And sometimes after reading a good story, I will then go to the movies to watch the movie someone made of that book. And sometimes it's a disappointment because the story I had in my own head was better. Has this ever happened to you before? I mean, if this hasn't happened to you, just keep reading books and going to movies, going to shows. You will probably have that experience. It can be very empowering to realize that with your own imagination, you can sometimes make a better story in your mind than a famous Hollywood director can put on screen with a huge budget. Sometimes even my book publisher has challenges figuring out what they want my books to look like. See, on the cover of my books, they're trying to put an image that will call out to the kind of reader who might enjoy the story. And that is not an exact science. When my 5 Kingdoms series came out, at first, Sky Raiders book 1 had that golden color, that golden cover, kind of the yellow cover. After it was out for some time, they switched to the blue cover. I think they liked that with the blue cover, you could see the scorpion monster more clearly. There are many of my books that have had different covers over the years. It's just another example that there's not only one way to picture a story, even for the book publisher. 5 Kingdoms is the series I finished immediately before Dragonwatch. It's a 5-book series. There's only 4 covers up on the screen right now. But if you don't know about this series, let me tell you a little bit about it. In Five Kingdoms, our main character is a boy named Cole. Cole goes trick-or-treating one Halloween with his best friend Dalton and a girl named Jenna. They knock into a house that is run by slave traders from another world. So Cole, Dalton, Jenna, a bunch of kids from their neighborhood get kidnapped and taken to a place called the Outskirts. Making it worse, if you're taken to the outskirts, the people who love you most forget you most. So their family don't even know they're gone. Their friends are not looking for them. They're basically on their own to try to get home. Does that sound like a big problem? I mean, part of my job as an author is to create enormous trouble for my characters. That's what makes a story interesting, is seeing what the characters do as they get into trouble. Definitely some of the trouble at the start of Five Kingdoms is some of the toughest I've given to my characters, but it also leads to a big story. The Outskirts is divided into 5 kingdoms. Each kingdom of the Outskirts has different magic that works there. For example, in book 3 of 5 Kingdoms, they go to a kingdom called Zeropolis, where magic has been used to develop advanced technologies. That those technologies only work in that kingdom. Book 4 of the series, they go to a place called Necronum, where there's like a fantasy version of the afterlife. They have ghosty stuff they have to deal with there. Basically, over the course of the series, there's a lot of huge trouble the characters have to overcome if they want to get home. I told you a little bit about some of the worlds I've created, some of the books I've written. Let's speak for a moment about why we create stuff in the first place. You know, if it were not for the creative ideas of other people, we would be living in a very boring, very inconvenient world. Thankfully, people have used their imaginations to make our world a more interesting place. Scientists give us space travel. Architects create cool buildings. Painters make beautiful art. Sculptors might give us monuments. Some people give us fun comics like Calvin and Hobbes, one of my favorites. Others give us great books or books that turn into movies, things like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Narnia. Those are, again, some of my favorites. Ever since I was young, I have liked to daydream and make up stories. At first, that was really frustrating. I would have this really cool story in my mind, and I would try to write it down. And as soon as I started writing it down, the story just didn't seem that cool anymore. I would compare what I'd written to my favorite books, and it just didn't seem that good. At first, I worried it was because the stories in my mind weren't good. But then I learned, no, it was more that I had to learn how to communicate those stories through writing, and that was going to take some practice. So I started paying attention to how my favorite authors built their scenes, and I started writing my own scenes. And over time, I got better at it. I failed at getting published for over 10 years of trying really hard, but finally at around age 30, I got my first book published. And after that, I was able to publish many other novels, about 20 so far. Basically, something that didn't seem possible as a kid became possible as I worked hard at it. A big part of my message for you is, hey, you might be that next person to create a book or a movie or an invention, or in some other way, use your creative talents to do something cool. Who here has some creative hobbies that they will do for fun sometimes? I'm a big fan of creative hobbies. I think it's a key to keeping your imagination strong. Let me throw some out. You tell me if you do them. Anyone here create with drawing or doodling? Anyone create by writing their own stories or telling their own stories? Anyone create with acting or performing? Anyone create with cooking, make good food? Anyone create with dance or movement? Maybe create with music, like play an instrument or sing? How about create with building stuff or making stuff? How about create with sports, like making up plays in sports or inventing your own games? So many ways to create. I just named a few. I'm not trying to say that you have to love every way to create. I'm just saying everybody should have some creative things they do for fun to keep their imagination strong, to help them have more fun in life. And hey, you never know. If you get really good at your creative hobby, it could become part of your job someday. I mean, that's what happened with me and writing. All right, to finish up today, let me share with you 4 secrets to becoming an author. These are 4 things you want to do if you want to get better at making your own stories. I talk about this way to create because it's the way that I've become kind of an expert in by devoting my life to it. After this, I will share a video preview from some of my books, and then I will also take some questions. So if you have questions, think about some questions you might want to message in. I've got some people here that will help field those questions for me. First, these 4 things. Number 1, good writers have lots of experiences. We pay attention to our experiences. You never know when you might see something around you that you can use in a book. This is even true for stories like Dragonwatch, where there's lots of magic and make-believe. I'll still get inspired by things that happen in my real life. For example, with my kids in my yard, we made up a game called Dragon Tag. Dragon Tag is like a mix between freeze tag and capture the flag. And as we were playing Dragon Tag one time, I decided in Dragonwatch, I wanted to have the characters play a game of tag against actual dragons. Of course, in the book, the stakes are higher. The dragons are trying to burn them to death and eat them. But that makes it more interesting than a game of tag in my backyard. Number 2, good writers exercise our imaginations by creating stories. The more you practice writing stories and telling stories, the better you will get. If you want to get good, you got to spend some time doing it. I sometimes compare this to if a kid wants to become an NBA basketball player, they probably have to play more basketball than just in PE, right? If you're going to become an NBA basketball player, you're probably going to play basketball in your free time a lot. You're going to practice a lot. You're going to play with friends. You might join leagues and teams outside of school, play for the school team as well. You're going to do everything you can to get practice and to get good. And writing's like that. If you want to get good at writing, if you're only writing in your English class, that might not be enough. When you write in your free time, you are free to write about whatever most interests you and to give it all the time and attention you need to make it really good. I know for me, writing in my spare time was an important part of how I developed as a writer. I try to encourage people to create, to write, and to draw. The Fablehaven Book of Imagination is sort of an activity book with activities based on the theme of what if you were the caretaker of a secret wildlife park for magical creatures. You get you drawing dragons or like making a map of what your secret wildlife park might look like. Number 3, good writers read a lot. When you read, pay attention to how your favorite authors tell their stories, and you can learn a lot about how to tell your own stories. Every author's techniques and tricks are just sitting there waiting to be noticed if you pay attention. And finally, number 4, when you write your stories down, share them with someone you trust. The reactions that you get from friends or family or anybody who reads your work can help you improve. How many of you guys sometimes get corrections on papers you turn in for school? I mean, that's just part of school, right? Look at this. Here's a page out of Fablehaven that I turned into my editor. Look how that page came back to me. Came back all marked up. It's because my editor's job is to make whatever corrections or improvements she can find in my work. I am thankful to have her. I want that book to be the best it can be when it gets in front of readers. So that is something you guys as students have in common with every professional author. We are all getting corrected so we can improve. A big part of writing a good book is rewriting that story until you tell the story in the clearest way possible. I'll rewrite my books 10, even 20 times before they're ready to be in stores. Does that sound like a lot of work? Yeah, guess what? It is a lot of work. But it's so rewarding to make the book the best it can be. And that's why I put in all that work with the rewriting. Guys, that is most of what I wanted to share with you today. And I did bring along a video preview. This video preview is for, I think, Dragonwatch Book 2. In this video preview, one of the characters in the story, one of the bad guys, a villain named Ronodin, the Dark Unicorn, will give you a little bit of an introduction to this book. So let's see if that'll play.
I know we haven't met. Let me introduce myself. I am Ronodin, known to some as the Dark Unicorn. I know what you're thinking. He doesn't look like a unicorn. Well, this is my human avatar. Enough about me. I have something for you. An invitation to attend the Feast of Welcome. You'll be attending as the guests of Kendra and Seth Sorensen, the caretakers of the dragon sanctuary called Wormroost. The feast will be held at Skyhold, the castle of the dragon. Getting there can be tricky. I suggest you travel by griffin. All the leaders of the protected territories will be there. Of course, most humans are paralyzed by fear in the presence of a dragon. Not to worry. With your invitation, I've included a special courage potion. You really should come. Celebrant, the king of the dragons, wants revenge. No need to look so distressed. The dragons won't eat you, at least not at the feast. The guests should be mostly safe. Kendra and Seth not taking any chances. I understand that Seth is bringing a sword that shoots a lightning bolt. Hard to know how much damage that would do to a dragon. And Kendra is bringing a bow that can shoot up to 300 arrows with a single command. I suppose a mouse could attack a tiger if it so chooses. Dinner and a show. The thought of what could happen. I want a front row seat. Don't you?
All right. Well, hopefully that played all right for you guys. I do have a few other book trailers. If you would like to see some of my other video previews of my books, you could go to brandonmull.com, and there's a bunch you can select from. All the ones for Dragonwatch are pretty good. I like some that we made recently for Dragonwatch where it interviews some of my characters and has them react to what it's like to be in my stories. Those are kind of fun. Also like the video preview for for Beyonders series is pretty good. Some of the video previews are sort of dumb, but several of them are also pretty interesting and fun. So you're welcome to check those out on your own time if you'd like. That is most of what I wanted to share with you. Hopefully I gave you enough information that you can know which of my books might most interest you. But now I'm ready to take some questions. If you have questions about anything we talked about today or what I do as an author, I'm happy to respond.
Okay, Mrs. Shenton's class would like to know which of your books is the favorite one that you read.
Okay, so Mrs. Shenton's class wants to know which of my books is my favorite. And that is really hard for me to pick because I like them all for different reasons. I think they have different strengths. For example, I think with Fablehaven, part of the strength is that you're seeing familiar magical creatures in a new way, and you're seeing a really interesting cast of characters go on a big adventure. I like that Fablehaven makes it feel like magic could be hidden just around the corner, and that maybe we just need a certain key to be able to recognize what's going on. My Beyonder series is fun because it's epic with huge clashes between these broken heroes and this evil emperor, and it's kind of like kingdoms and wars and battles. The Five Kingdoms series is really cool because it happens in this really interesting world where there's so much to discover and so many secrets. Candy Shop War is fun because it's a normal neighborhood, normal kids, but with weird magical things going on. If I had to pick my favorites, it's probably some of the later books in the series, like my finale books. Those are the funnest for me to create, to end the book with a big bang. So like Fablehaven 5 or Beyonders Book 3. But hopefully I gave you enough information that you can guess what you would most like. If you haven't ever read my books before, start with Fablehaven Book 1 or Dragonwatch Book 1. If you want a scary beginning, you can try Five Kingdoms Book 1. If you want silly and weird, try Candy Shop War. Hopefully that gives you enough information to know what you might want to try.
The username Traffy wants to know what was your inspiration behind Ronan, because he's the best by the way.
Okay, so we got a user named Traffy who's wondering what was the inspiration behind Ronadin. And Ronadin, the Dark Unicorn, is mentioned in the Fablehaven series, but we never really got any of his story until Dragonwatch. And, like for me, creating a good villain, what makes Ronadin an interesting, cool villain is he used to be on the side of good, extremely on the side of good. These unicorns are some of the most innocent and pure of the magical creatures. And so to have one turn dark and evil makes him inherently kind of interesting to me. And also the fact that he's very charismatic and funny and clever, and yet to see him as an adversary and fighting for the cause of evil makes things tricky. I don't know. I was just trying to create a villain that I would want to read about with Ronadin. So I'm glad if you like that character. What else do we got?
Okay. Liza Schultz wants to know, what is the hardest thing about being an author?
Liza Schultz wants to know, what is the hardest part about being an author? For me, probably the hardest part is the deadlines. So it's not just creating a good book, but creating it with a ticking clock, right? Almost like creating a good book while a time bomb is ticking. Sometimes that can feel like a lot of pressure to try to make it work and make it right and make it the best it can be, all within a certain amount of time. But also that's the price of doing it professionally, is that, I make a contract with the publisher. I have to deliver a book by a certain time. And so though it adds pressure, it also makes me work faster than I would probably otherwise work. And so in the end, it probably works out. But definitely for me, deadlines are the hardest part of being an author.
Mr. Edwards' class wants to know if there's going to be any movies for Fablehaven.
Mr. Edwards' class is wondering about movies for Fablehaven. There is a good chance we'll make movies at some point. We have optioned the movie rights before to Fablehaven, kind of several times. Currently, there's a team of filmmakers working on trying to turn Fablehaven into a movie. So could be that this team will be the one that gets it done. Some of my other books, like Spirit Animals or Candy Shop War, have also been optioned to be turned into movies. The way that works is when they get an option, that means they've rented the rights. A movie studio or a production company have rented the rights to develop the project, to try to get the right screenplay, to try to get the right director, the right actors, the right budget. And sometimes they rent the rights to turn it into a movie, and they don't get it all figured out, and then the rights come back to me, and I can rent it out somewhere else. So I think sooner or later we'll make a good movie. I sure hope so. But it'll need to be the right team of people who fully get the job done. We'll see who that will be or if that will happen.
Mr. Byard's class at Odyssey Elementary wants to know if you can choose what art is used in your books, or is that up to the publisher?
Okay, yeah. So we have Mr. Byard's class asking about what's my involvement with the art on the books. And for the most part, once the publisher buys the rights from me once they buy the book from me, it's mostly up to them because what the art will look like, because they have taken on the responsibility of marketing the book, and the look of the book is part of that. And so now my publishers have all been really great at letting me participate in that process, letting me weigh in with my opinions. Several of my books, they wanted to get the cover figured out before the book was done, which means that they needed me to tell them what should be on the cover because they hadn't read the book yet. And so I've been able to be heavily involved in choosing what the covers would look like or designing the basics of the image. But it's all up to them to produce that final cover, and they get so much credit for having done beautiful covers for my books over the years. I've never felt bad about it. I've always been delighted with what my publishers have done with covers and interior art.
There's a few questions of what's going to be your next book and where can you find your books.
Cool. So people are wondering what's my next book or where can they find my books. My next book will be Dragonwatch Book 5. That's what I'm currently writing. It's the finale book to Dragonwatch. If you're trying to find my books, they should be available wherever books are sold. I know you can get them online at places like Amazon, and you can find them at Barnes & Nobles. You can find them at most independent booksellers. And so if you have a local independent bookstore, I'm all for supporting your local bookstore. But like, yeah, you can usually find my books wherever books are sold. And that includes, often you can find it at the library. If you don't have my books at your local library or your school library, you can just tell the librarian that you really want to read some. And usually they'll try to have on the shelves the kind of books that people are asking for. So those are some thoughts on where you can find them.
Pierce says that his sister wants to know when Dragonwatch 5 comes out.
Okay, so somebody wants to know when Pierce's sister wants to know when Dragonwatch 5 comes out. And that'll be around, as long as things stay on schedule, around this time next year, sometime around October or something of next year. And I think I'll have it done on time. And that will be the big finale for Dragonwatch. And then I got more stuff coming. I'll do like a Candy Shop War Book 3, which is something I've been waiting on for a long time, called the Carnival Quest. And then I also have some plans for a brand new series, brand new adventure. That'll depend on which of my new ideas the publishers like best, but I have a bunch of ideas, so I'll be producing books for years to come. That's my plan. You guys, you asked really great questions. I appreciate your time. Hopefully I answered some of the questions you most had. The books that most inspired me were the Lord of the Rings and the Narnia books and the Harry Potter books. Those books showed me how great fantasy can be, and hopefully I will write some books that will also be fun and add to the canon of fantasy literature. Thank you for spending some time with me. If you remember anything from this presentation, I hope that you will remember that if you want your imagination to be strong, read good books and create cool stuff. And if my books aren't the ones working for you, then find books by a different author. I believe that everybody has books that they would like if they find the right story. So thank you for your time and attention. Have a good rest of your week. This is Brandon Mull signing off.